The SOS that changed everything. Deep in the silence of space, where no human had ever traveled, a small listening post floated near the edge of the Sol system. It was just another routine night for Lieutenant Ryan Carter, monitoring signals from the endless void. Most of the time, it was nothing. Static, old transmissions, or signals from distant human colonies. But tonight was different. A sharp, high-pitched alarm echoed through the control room. Ryan's eyes snapped open. His hands moved quickly over the console as strange data filled the screen. A distress signal, faint but repeating. "Commander, you need to see this," he said, his voice tight with urgency. Within minutes, Commander Evelyn Clark stood behind him, her sharp eyes scanning the screen. The message was garbled, broken by interference, but a few words were clear. "Please, help. They are coming. We are dying." A chill ran down her spine. It wasn't human. The language was unfamiliar, but their advanced AI translated enough to understand one thing. This was a cry for help, and whoever sent it was terrified. "Where is it coming from?" Clark asked. Ryan checked the coordinates, far outside known space. No human colonies near that region. Silence filled the room. An unknown species, sending a desperate SOS from the middle of nowhere. This was first contact, but not the way humanity had imagined. The decision. Hours later, the United Earth Defense Council gathered. Generals, scientists, and politicians debated the distress call. Some believed it was a trap. Others thought it was a trick to lure humanity into a conflict. Admiral Jonathan Hayes, an older man with deep scars of past wars, leaned forward. "If they are begging for help, they must be in danger. The question is, from what?" Dr. Ilara Vasquez, a xenobiologist, tapped her tablet. "The message repeats the phrase, 'They are coming.' That suggests an invasion, a predator, or something worse." President David Ross, the leader of Earth, exhaled. "Humanity has always believed in exploration, in helping those in need. If we ignore this, we may regret it later." The room fell into silence. The decision was clear. "Send a scout ship," the president ordered. "We need to know what happened out there." Mission: Valkyrie. The HSS Valkyrie, a state-of-the-art stealth reconnaissance ship, launched from Earth. Its mission: investigate the SOS signal and report back. The crew of 6 were some of the best: pilots, scientists, and intelligence officers. As the ship jumped through hyperspace, Captain Lucas Reed stood on the bridge, staring at the swirling void ahead. He had led missions before, but something about this felt wrong. His second-in-command, Lieutenant Mara Sullivan, checked the systems. "We're approaching the signal source. No signs of ships or communications." "Keep shields up," Lucas said. "Something doesn't feel right." The ship slowed as it entered the unknown sector. What they saw made their blood run cold. A planet, burning. Cities reduced to rubble. Space stations shattered into floating debris. No signs of life. Mara whispered, "My God, what happened here?" Suddenly, a weak signal crackled through the ship's speakers. A voice, faint, full of fear. "You shouldn't have come. They will find you." Then, without warning, their scanners flashed red. Multiple unknown ships decloaking, surrounding them. The last words recorded from the Valkyrie before it vanished were, "It's worse than we thought." First contact with the unknown threat. The silence on the HSS Valkyrie's bridge was shattered by blaring alarms. The crew barely had time to react before red warning lights flooded the control panels. Multiple hostiles detected. They just appeared out of nowhere. Lieutenant Mara Sullivan's voice was tight with urgency as her fingers flew over the controls. Captain Lucas Reed's heart pounded. The alien ships had materialized as if from the void itself. Massive, dark, and predatory. Their jagged hulls seemed to absorb the light around them, like living shadows in space. "Shields up. Evasive maneuvers," he ordered. Pilot Dax Renner yanked the controls, forcing the Valkyrie into a sharp dive. The ship barely dodged a barrage of crimson energy bolts that screamed through the void, missing them by inches. Lucas gritted his teeth. Open a channel. Try to communicate. Mara's fingers danced over the console, broadcasting on all frequencies. The response came almost instantly. A guttural, alien voice filled the cabin. You were warned. Now you will suffer. Then the attack began in earnest. A fight for survival. The enemy ships moved like predators. Fast, precise, ruthless. Their weapons tore through space, forcing the Valkyrie to twist and spin in an impossible dance of survival. They're hurting us, Mara shouted. Lucas saw it too. The alien vessels weren't just attacking. They were maneuvering, driving them toward something. Dax, break off. Get us out of here. I'm trying. The pilot growled, his hands tight on the controls. They're too fast. A sudden jolt threw everyone against their restraints as the ship lurched violently. Direct hit. Smoke filled the cabin as sparks rained from the ceiling. The shields were failing. One more strike, and they wouldn't be making it home. Lucas made a decision, a desperate one. Prepare the emergency beacon. Send everything we've recorded, coordinates, ship signatures, their attack patterns. Send it straight to Earth. Mara hesitated. If we do that, they'll know where we air. They already do, Lucas said grimly. But now Earth will know too. With a final push, the distress signal was fired into space. A desperate SOS, racing back toward humanity. Then the alien ships closed in. The Valkyrie's last stand. A deep, rumbling voice echoed through the speakers again, filled with cold amusement. Brave, but foolish. Your kind will never be ready. Then the main view screen lit up, revealing a dark, monstrous figure sitting upon a throne of twisted metal. Its eyes, black voids of endless hunger, stared directly at Lucas. Welcome to the end of your species. A final explosion rocked the Valkyrie. And then, nothing. Silence. The Valkyrie was gone. But their message, that was still racing toward Earth. Back on Earth, humanity's awakening. Deep beneath the towering skyline of New Terra, the distress beacon from the Valkyrie arrived. The transmission was garbled, but one thing was clear. Something out there had just declared war on humanity. Admiral Jonathan Hayes stood as the data finished downloading. The holographic image of the alien ship flickered before him, its monstrous form etched into his mind. A heavy silence hung over the war room. Then the Admiral turned, his voice cold and unshakable. Wake the fleet. The wrath of humanity unleashed. The halls of Earth's high command were eerily silent. The message from the HSS Valkyrie had arrived an hour ago, and the weight of its warning pressed down like a storm cloud over everyone in the war room. The recording played again, crackling static, Mara's panicked voice, the monstrous alien figure's chilling final words. Welcome to the end of your species. Admiral Jonathan Hayes clenched his jaw. His ice-blue eyes locked onto the holographic projection of the enemy fleet. This was no random encounter. This was a hunting ground, and humanity had just become prey. Not on his watch. He turned to his officers, his voice as sharp as a blade. We go to war. Operation Retribution. Within hours, the massive orbital fleet command roared to life. Deep space dreadnoughts, sleek destroyers, and hyper-advanced stealth corvettes were pulled from their berths. Earth's most powerful warships, silent guardians for decades, were awakened. In the heart of the fleet stood the UNS Leviathan, a behemoth of destruction, its hull plated with next-generation armor, its cannons capable of shattering moons. Standing at its bridge was Captain Elias Voss, a veteran of countless skirmishes. His hands rested behind his back as he surveyed the deployment screens. He had seen war before, but this was different. This time, humanity wasn't fighting for resources, politics, or pride. This was survival. Behind him, Commander Lion Sado, his tactical officer, analyzed the enemy fleet data. They operate with hive-like precision. Their ships don't just attack. They stalk, waiting for weaknesses. Elias's gaze darkened. Then we'll show them what happens when you corner humanity. Admiral Hayes's voice came through the comms. Captain, your fleet will be the first wave. You are to locate the enemy stronghold, engage at will, and send a message back. Elias understood exactly what that meant. Strike first. Strike hard. Make them regret ever looking toward Earth. A war humanity didn't start, but would finish. Across the Sol system, fleets mobilized. Weapons were armed. Ships were fueled. Armies stood at attention. But this wasn't desperation. This was fury. Humanity had spent centuries perfecting warfare, fighting among themselves, crafting strategies that had crushed empires and rewritten the rules of battle. Now, all that knowledge, all that experience, all that wrath was aimed at one enemy. They thought Earth was weak. They thought humans were just another species to be hunted. They were about to learn how wrong they were. The first strike. The fleet tore through space like a vengeful storm, led by the Leviathan. Their target, a nearby sector where the Valkyrie's signal had last been traced. The moment they arrived, they saw it. The wreckage of the Valkyrie floated in the void, torn apart, its hull cracked like a corpse left to rot. But what surrounded it made Elias's blood turn to fire. The enemy ships, hundreds of them, waiting, watching, as if they had been expecting them. Lion's voice was calm, but deadly. They want to see if we'll run. Elias's lips curled into a cold smile. Then let's disappoint them. He turned to his weapons officer. All batteries. Fire. Hell unleashed. The silence of space was shattered as beams of plasma, railgun slugs, and torpedo salvos ripped into the alien fleet. The enemy ships twisted and dodged. But humanity had predicted that. The Leviathan's eyelid targeting systems calculated their evasive patterns in real time, predicting where they would move before they even did. One by one, alien ships exploded into fireballs, their remains scattering into the void. But the enemy wasn't fleeing. They were adapting. Their ships began moving in ways human systems couldn't immediately predict, shifting their formations, twisting in impossible angles. Learning. Elias narrowed his eyes. They think they can match us. Then he gave the order that would be remembered for generations. Override standard tactics. Initiate the maneuver protocol. Across the fleet, thousands of human pilots took direct control of their warships. And that was where the real fight began. Humanity's answer to the apex hunters. The battlefield was chaos. Fire and wreckage filled the void as the two fleets clashed. But there was something different now. Something the enemy had never encountered before. Humans were not fighting like prey. They were fighting like apex predators. The moment everything changed. Captain Elias Voss gripped the command console, his pulse steady as he observed the unfolding battle. The enemy had adapted, changing formations, anticipating standard tactics. But humans didn't rely on scripts. They relied on instinct. With maneuver protocol active, every human ship was under manual control, piloted by warriors with years of experience in unpredictable high-speed combat. The alien hunters, efficient and precise, relied on their central hive intelligence. They expected predictability. What they got was madness. The hunter becomes the hunted. Destroyers zigzagged through enemy fire, their unpredictable movements causing alien targeting systems to fail. Stealth corvettes vanished into the void, reappearing behind enemy cruisers and gutting them with precision railgun fire. The massive Leviathan, instead of holding position like a traditional dreadnought, charged straight into the enemy formation, blasting apart anything in its path. The enemy hesitated. For the first time, they didn't know what to do. Their cold, calculating nature was failing them against human chaos. And that's when Admiral Hayes struck the killing blow. A new kind of war. Back on Earth's high command, Hayes was watching the battle unfold. This wasn't just a fight. It was a test. He turned to his lead strategist. How much longer until we have complete control of their battle network? The woman didn't even look up from her display. We already do. Hayes smirked. The enemy had spent years perfecting biological evolution. Humans had spent years perfecting cyber warfare. The trap closes. Across the battlefield, enemy ships suddenly began hesitating. Their movements slowed. Some fired at empty space, others completely shut down. Elias noticed immediately. Commander Sato. She grinned. We cracked their command link. Their entire network is blind. Elias let out a breath. Then finish it. A single command was sent. And then, like a pack of wolves descending on a wounded beast, humanity struck. Fire in the void. Within minutes, what had once been an organized alien fleet became floating wreckage. The few enemy ships that remained tried to flee, but human warships were already waiting. The battle was over. Humanity had done the impossible. But Elias wasn't celebrating, because on the edge of his sensor readings, a much larger fleet had just arrived. The real war was about to begin. The apex war begins. The battlefield was silent. Wreckage drifted through the void, the remains of an enemy fleet that had been torn apart by humanity's ferocity and ingenuity. But Captain Elias Voss wasn't celebrating. He stood on the Leviathan's bridge, staring at the distant void where the sensors had detected something far worse than what they had just destroyed. The real enemy had arrived. A dark shadow on the horizon. Captain, Commander Lion Sato's voice was tense. I'm getting multiple signatures, big ones. Elias turned toward the main display, his heart hammering. The screen flickered, then illuminated with a terrifying sight. A second alien fleet had emerged from the darkness, 10 times larger than the first. Their ships were colossal, black as the void, pulsing with an eerie green light. Unlike the first wave, which had fought like a precision strike force, these ships moved like warlords marching into conquest. Elias exhaled. They sent the hunters first. Sato's jaw tightened. And now the predators are here. Humanity's defiance. A voice crackled over the command channel. Admiral Hayes. Leviathan, stand by. We're deploying the second wave. Across the system, hyperspace ripples tore through the void as more human warships arrived. The Solar Defense Fleet. Humanity's finest warriors, their ships forged in war. Their pilots battle-hardened. A single transmission was sent to the alien fleet. A warning. You should have left when you had the chance. The enemy did not respond. Instead, they opened fire. The sky burns. A storm of plasma lanced through space. Alien weapons ripped through the void, searing toward human warships at impossible speeds. But humans had learned. The first fleet had given them insight into how these creatures fought. They weren't going to fall for the same tricks twice. The evolution of war. Elias barked orders. Activate Aegis Protocol. Deploy decoys. Across the battlefield, human ships burst apart, except they weren't real. Advanced holographic technology projected fake warships, confusing the enemy targeting systems. Missiles and plasma fire passed harmlessly through them. And while the enemy wasted time firing at illusions, the real warships moved in for the kill. Destroyers weaved between enemy capital ships, unleashing concentrated railgun fire. Stealth corvettes disabled key enemy vessels, jamming their communications. Dreadnoughts unleashed devastation, their main cannons tearing through the void. And at the center of it all, the Leviathan led the charge. A war of survival. The battle raged for hours. The enemy was relentless, their technology advanced, their numbers overwhelming. But humans never surrendered. For every ship they lost, they took down 2 more. For every fallen warrior, 10 more stood to take their place. The enemy came expecting an easy victory. Instead, they found a species that refused to die. The turning point. Then, something changed. The alien fleet staggered. Their movements slowed. Their formation collapsed. Commander Sato's eyes widened. They're retreating. Elias watched in disbelief. No, they're regrouping. And then, as if answering his worst fear, a massive planet-sized warship emerged from hyperspace. It was unlike anything humanity had ever seen. A fortress, a moving world of war. And it was coming straight for them. The war titan awakens. The void of space trembled. Where once there had been the wreckage of battle, now there was something far worse. A shadow eclipsed the distant stars. A warship so massive, it defied logic. Not a battleship. Not a dreadnought. A war titan. The enemy's ultimate weapon had arrived. The face of doom. Elias Voss felt a chill crawl down his spine. On the main display, the alien superweapon filled the screen, an enormous, planet-sized construct. Blackened hulls layered over one another like living armor, pulsating with eerie green energy. Sato whispered, "It's not just a ship. It's a mobile world." Admiral Hayes' voice cut through the silence. "Leviathan, fall back. We need time to analyze this thing." Elias clenched his fists. Time. They didn't have time. Because the war titan was already moving. The first blow. A deep, gut-wrenching hum vibrated through the battlefield. It came from the war titan itself. Then, in an instant, a beam of light cut through space. It wasn't plasma. It wasn't energy. It was pure destruction. One human battleship vanished instantly. No explosion. No debris. Just gone. Elias swore. What the hell was that? Sato's face was pale. It's not a weapon. It's erasing matter itself. The bridge went silent. If that thing fired on Earth, it wouldn't just burn. It would cease to exist. The last stand. Admiral Hayes' voice came over the comms. "All forces, defensive formation. We hold the line. Earth is watching." Elias took a deep breath. The Leviathan was the largest warship in the fleet, but against that thing, it was like an ant facing a god. But humans didn't bow to gods. They defied them. The plan. Savo turned to Elias. "I have an idea. It's insane." Elias grinned. "Perfect. I love insane." They didn't have firepower to match the war titan, but they had brains. Humans didn't just fight harder. They fought smarter. The weak spot. Sato pulled up a heat map of the war titan's structure. "See this?" She pointed to a small pulse of energy near its core. Elias narrowed his eyes. "That's its power source." Sato nodded. "It's a living ship, but it still needs energy. If we overload that core..." Elias finished her sentence. "We kill a god." The suicide run. The plan was madness. They had to fly inside the war titan, dodge its automated defenses, reach the core, detonate a warhead, and somehow survive. Elias turned to his crew. "No one's forcing you to do this, but I need volunteers." Every single person stood up. Humans weren't just fighting for survival anymore. They were fighting for revenge. For every colony that was burned. For every planet that fell. For every human that vanished in that monster's beam. They were about to show this so-called god what it meant to anger humanity. Elias smirked. "Let's go break the universe. Humanity breaks a god." The war titan loomed over the battlefield like a judgment passed down from the void itself. The last remnants of the human fleet flickered between wreckage and fire, their hulls cracked, their weapons dim. Yet in the heart of the chaos, amidst the endless dark, humanity refused to kneel. The final gamble. Elias Voss gripped the controls of the Leviathan as it hurtled toward the war titan's core. The plan. Simple. The execution. Suicidal. But humanity didn't win wars by playing it safe. Sato's voice crackled over the comms. "We have one shot at this, Elias. If we miss, we won't." Elias' jaw tightened. They couldn't. The Titan's defenses were endless. Automated turrets, gravity wells, shields that shimmered like rippling oceans. The Leviathan's hull screamed under the pressure. "Hold together," Elias whispered. "Just a little longer." dancing with death. The war titan had never known fear. It had never known desperation. But now it was learning. Human ships didn't retreat. They didn't surrender. They dove straight into the mouth of hell, laughing. The Leviathan twisted through the Titan's shields, slipping past defenses designed to repel entire fleets. Sato's screen flared red. Core breach detected. Elias, we're right on top of it. This was it. A god's last words. The war titan's consciousness flickered. For the first time in its existence, it spoke. Its voice echoed through every human channel. Cold, endless, absolute. You are Isinel. Elias grinned. And you are dead. He slammed the command. Detonation sequence. Engaged. A star is born. For a fraction of a second. Silence. Then, a light unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The war titan didn't explode. It collapsed. Its form imploded in on itself, an ancient god devouring its own existence. The energy rippled outward, washing over the battlefield like a newborn star. Ships were tossed like paper in a storm. The void itself trembled. And when the light faded, the war titan was no more. A new legend. Elias Voss exhaled, his hands shaking. The Leviathan was barely holding together, but they were alive. Sato's voice was weak, but triumphant. We did it. Admiral Hayes' voice broke through the static. All remaining ships, report in. Earth is watching. The war is won. The war titan, the unkillable horror that had darkened the stars, was gone. The galaxy would remember this day, not because humanity had survived, but because they had conquered. And somewhere, in the silence of deep space, another species watched and whispered, "Do not anger the humans.